Hey, what's up, everybody, and welcome back to Career Insights 501. This is Dr. Loso, and today we have special guest Brandon Davis, and he's going to be talking to us about a career as a UFC fighter. So, Brandon, welcome to the show.
I appreciate you having me on.
So you're making history here today. You're the first professional athlete that I have on the show. So, congratulations.
Like I said, I appreciate it.
So start off by telling the people a little bit about yourself.
I'm originally from Georgia. I went to ICC to play football, and then after ICC, I went to Mississippi State to just finish up school. And at that point, I started doing jiu-jitsu. And from there, I started doing MMA. Like, I had my first MMA fight like 6 months later, and then moved down to the coast right after college. I was pre-med in college and moved down to the coast to try to make it to the UFC. And a year after I moved down to Biloxi, I made it to the UFC. So I guess it all worked out.
Oh, nice. So, that happened for you pretty fast, huh? Would you say that was pretty fast to get to the UFC?
Yeah, but I was already training and fighting for, what was that? I moved down here in 2016. I made it in 2017, so I was already fighting for 7 years.
Okay. Yeah, because I remember, were you fighting or you just training at Killer Bees in Starkville?
No, I was fighting. I was fighting for sure.
Okay. Yeah. So I remember I was doing kickboxing there for a while.
Yeah, before Jay ever opened up his own, we had a Starkville Jiu-Jitsu club. It was like a little club from the school that you could do, and we were doing that since I joined that in 2020, so because I was 20 years old.
Gotcha. Huh? I was taking up kickboxing with Jay, but I definitely didn't have any aspirations of becoming a UFC fighter. I just had some local ass that I needed to kick, and so I needed to get some moves. No, I'm just kidding. But that's definitely.
I'm gonna get some rounds in with you.
Yeah, it's been a long time. Like, I have my gi back here. When I moved to Orlando, I started to go and start rolling, but with my work schedule, that didn't work out too good. So now I'm trying to find a place up here in Dallas, in Frisco. It would be easier if I stayed in Dallas, but it's about 25 minutes to get from Frisco to Dallas, so that kind of doesn't work either. So
oh man, I'm sure I could find you a place out there.
All right, we'll have to talk so I can see what you can find me, because I want to go somewhere good, but I saw someplace last night by the vitamin shop, but I didn't know if it was any good or not. So I was like, I got to check the reviews.
I got you.
So tell us what does it look like the day in and day out for a UFC fighter? Because I know that isn't something that's like typical, like a typical job or career. So
yeah, so.
Well, let me ask you this first. Is that your full-time job, or do you have something else?
That was my full-time job. I work at UPS on the side because in the UFC you don't get insurance unless you can only claim it on that fight. Like, if you fought, then you can claim anything after that fight for like 30 days. UPS, you get like literally the world, some of the best insurance in the world at UPS. So I just work there part-time. Like, in the morning we go preload the trucks. So you get in there about 3:30, 4 o'clock. They bring the 18-wheelers in. You unload the trucks to load up the UPS trucks for the drivers. Then after that, you leave. You're done by 9 o'clock in the morning, and then I'll go train in the morning, eat lunch, do some cardio or some stuff at my house because I have a gym at my house as well, and then eat again, and then I'll go back in the afternoon and train that night. So it's a full-time job. I mean, I'm getting my weightlifting in, everything. So it's about 8 hours a day still. Just a lot of physical. It's always like people wish that they had when they were young. Like, oh man, I wish I could just work out for a job. Like, it's that, but it's I mean, once it's your job, you're like, man, I'm tired of working out.
Yeah, that's kind of like some of those jobs that, like you said, when you're a kid, you think that's what you want, and it still is what you want. But once you get in there, it's like, okay, this is real life. I have to be committed to this to really make it work. So, because when you're going into the gym and you're just doing one a days, two a days, and yeah, it's fun. But when your income and you have to go out here and win fights and all that stuff, then it's a whole another different ball game. It's kind of like bodybuilding, and I was just like, man, because I don't eat a lot. And I look at the amount of food that they have to eat throughout the day, and it's just like, Jesus Christ, like I couldn't do it.
Yeah. No, it's fun when it's just a hobby and you get to go when you want, but then when you have to be there every day, every time, 3 times a day, and they get mad if you miss, and if you miss, you're missing stuff that's going to make you better. So then at that point, like you said, it's a job. It ain't a hobby anymore. So it becomes less fun. I mean, it's still fun, but it's not like you're doing it because you want to. You're doing it because you have to win fights.
Yeah. So you had mentioned a little bit about you starting out at your local high school when you got into, what was it, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu or Muay Thai?
No, I didn't start jiu-jitsu till I got to Mississippi State. So that was at the Starkville, Mississippi State Jiu-Jitsu Club or whatever. And that was Jay was there, and then after that he started his own business and I moved with him. But so I didn't start till I was 20 years old.
Gotcha. Okay. So I guess what made you want to get into that whole mixed martial arts thing? Is it something like you saw with UFC on TV?
No, I used to watch UFC on TV and like, man, I would never do that. Like, it didn't look fun. But then when I got to Mississippi State, it's just, I mean, I'm a competitor and I like to compete. So jiu-jitsu and boxing and Muay Thai and all that was a way to compete against somebody and still have that adrenaline rush and not just go to school and come home and work out and just be monotonous every day. You get to try to compete against people because when you're in high school, you get to compete in whatever sports you're in, like like baseball or track or football. And once you leave high school, that's not really a case anymore. Like once you leave high school, that's why people gain a lot of weight because you don't have to do these sports and you don't have the option really to do the sports. You might be like on a softball league or something, but when you do jiu-jitsu, you get to compete against people all around the world. It's the same, like it never dropped off, and that you can do that until you're 80 years old if you wanted to, if your body keeps up. So it's another way to compete because you can't, after high school baseball, unless you're playing in college, or high school football, unless you're playing college ball, there is no other ball, right? So you're either just going to school and working out and not able to compete. So I had to find a way to compete, and that was it.
Gotcha. So what was the point where you got to and you said, man, I'm pretty good at this. Like I might want to make a career out of this. Like when did that moment happen for you?
When I decided to move down to the coast, because I had a good job working at a doctor's office doing these pulmonary tests on people, and I mean I could have sat there and done that all day every day for the rest of my life and made good money. But I was like, man, my buddy Tyler Hill kept trying to talk me down, come down to the coast, move down to the coast. We'll get you to the UFC, move down to the coast. I was like, I've got a pretty good job. I got a nice house, whatever. And then finally he talked, I want to beat the dude that used to be in the Bellator, and the fight wasn't close. And they're like, man, you need to come down here. You can make it. I was like, all right, I'll move down there. And that's when I guess I decided to go all in. Before that, I knew I was good, but it was just, I mean, I had a lot of options, and I was like, why would I give up these options? And then in my head, I was like, I can always come back to this other job later on in life. You can only do this sport while you're young, so why not try it while you're young?
Yeah. I think there's like good advice because I think people play it safe a lot and don't really step out there. So, I think there's really good advice for people to hear. Just, truck deliveries and unloading, those jobs are always going to be there, and you can do those, until, like you say, you're an old person, but you don't really get these opportunities to do stuff like that. I mean, once that period has passed in your life, it's like, you're sitting back regretting and thinking about your coulda, woulda, shoulda.
Yeah, no, I'd rather not regret. Be like, oh man, I wish I would have tried. Instead, I did try and it ended up working out. And if you ever like listen to Gary Vee or any of those like super motivational speakers,
Mm-hmm.
that they'll all tell you like your 20s is for trying stuff out and messing up, and you're not supposed to be stuck down in this one job when you're 20 years. Try everything that you can, see what you like, and then by the time you're 30, then you'll figure out what's there for you. And like your 20s is for
Yeah.
trying new stuff.
Yeah. I agree with that. I think a large part of like the opposite mentality of that is just tradition and how things have been done in the past. That people's like, oh, I gotta get this job and stay with it for a long time. But I think like our generation was the turning point for that, and we started to like hop around on jobs because God knows I've hopped around on I've like worked for a lot of companies, but
I agree, but I think even now, even more generations are doing it better. Like you find out that you
yeah.
don't have to go to college to get these good jobs. I mean, college is good, yes. But how many people do you know that went to college and got psych degrees or other degrees that they don't even use for their job? So all they did was build a lot of debt, and
Mm-hmm.
now they don't have a job to end up paying that debt, and they find a job that's completely separate that they could have done anyways. Like I understand, like I said, go for whatever you can, but if I would have started just preloading at UPS when I was in college, when I was 20, right? Because you can't drive until you're
Mm-hmm.
20. You can't drive for UPS until you're 21. Then at that point, I'm
Mm-hmm.
still able to do whatever else because I'm done with my duties of working at 9 o'clock. And then after that, if I'm in college, I'm able to pay for my college by working right there, and I have insurance, which nobody at 20 has insurance unless you're on your parents. And I'm telling you, it's the best insurance in the world. And then you have your opportunities after 9 o'clock. You get to your classes. If you want to try other stuff in the day, you have that. I mean, you don't have to go to college these days. Like I said, if you're trying to go to be a doctor and stuff, yes, that's good. But if you're just trying to do something, I don't know. I don't know. I'm just saying the newer generation has it down better, I think, because they see that you don't have to. Now, I'm not saying
Mm-hmm.
don't go to college, because college is good for certain people and it does a lot of stuff for certain people. But I haven't used my college degree, but I went a different route, and I know a lot of people have, and it just puts a lot of people in debt. But also, it works good for a lot of people. So you have to try to figure out what's for you. And if you want to try college for a few years and do that, then do that. But if you don't, then I'm not gonna tell you have to go to college. Like my kids, if they tell me they don't want to go to college, I'm not gonna force them to go to college. Kind of like I wasn't forced to go to college because
Mm-hmm.
I was trying to. Sports helped me with that, but it was always like you're either going to college or you're going to do the military or do this. So my kids, if they tell me they don't want to go to college, and I'm not going to be mad at them.
Yeah. I think you bring up some good points, and I agree with everything that you said. I think with the younger generation that not only that they're doing it better, but I think they have more opportunities. So like I don't really know how old you were, but I group you in there with millennials, and I might be on the like the far end, the older side of millennials. But I think when we were growing up, the opportunities weren't really there. Like you didn't really have these like institutions that you could go to and get certifications. Well, they were out there, but it wasn't as plentiful as it is now. And like being a social media influencer and
I
just all
agree.
this
Didn't
stuff.
have the internet.
Yeah.
You could if you didn't like back even when us going to college, like Facebook, Instagram was just started, right?
Yeah.
So I mean, I'm not even talking about being a social media influencer. Like you had to fax stuff in. It wasn't like these days you can online sign papers and stuff. It was. I mean, it's changed so
Yeah.
much. So I mean,
Yeah.
it's the internet has helped people a lot these days, and yeah, that wasn't available when we were there, and even the people before. So I understand why like going to college and having to do all that was so big back in the past. But now, I mean, you can
Yeah.
learn just as much just off going to YouTube videos and
Yeah.
dialing in what you want to do. But like I said, I'm not trying to sway anybody from going to college. If you want to go to college, do that. But also
Mm-hmm.
know that you don't have to make a career these days.
Yeah. It's funny you said that you don't use your degree. I was doing some research while writing my book, and I think it's like 60 some odd percent of people don't have a job in their college major. But like I have a master's and PhD, and while I do have a job in my field, I feel like I'm not using my degree, especially my doctorate degree. But that's a whole nother episode. But I'm gonna have to put you down when I go and apply for this part-time job at UPS so I can get some of these benefits.
Bro, I'm telling you, it is unreal. Like, I know my brother just started at UPS a year ago. It takes 9 months. It used to be you get insurance after 30 days, but I guess so many people would come in and get their 30 days and then get the insurance and use it and then for whatever they need it and then quit. So they made it to where you have to work there 9 months. And after your 9 months, you get it, which was good because my brother had something going on with his throat. He didn't know. He just started working at UPS because I was working there, and it's not the same one. He's in Tuscaloosa. I'm in over here in Ocean Springs, and luckily he had the insurance because he ended up having throat cancer, and it paid for 100% of that. And we have a kid coming up. I know it costs usually about $4,000 because my wife likes to do home birth, and even through the hospital, it costs about the same. But it's 100% covered through UPS. I mean, it's the best. I don't pay. I don't pay hardly anything. I go get my teeth checked out. Don't pay a copay. It's nothing. The ladies at the dentist office literally asked me, she's like, "Where do you work? This is the best insurance I've ever seen. Can you get my husband a job?" I swear, it is unreal how good it is. So I would keep this job because UFC only pays your insurance after you fight. So if I hurt my leg during the fight, or if I say like I tore my ACL one time, 3 years. I wasn't in the UFC at that point, so I was like, I'll wait till I get to the UFC, and I'm going to make them pay for it. So I tore it, had a torn ACL for 3 years, made it back to the UFC, and I told them I tore it in the fight just because that's how you had to claim it. They know I didn't, but then they had to pay for it, so they paid 100% for it. I could have used UPS for it, but if UFC is going to pay 100%, why would I not?
Right, yeah. Gotcha.
So, I mean, it's worth it. And you only have to be in there for a few hours in the morning, and you're out by the time most people are at work and get to work anyway. So if you needed a second job or another job, you can go to your job at 9 o'clock.
Yeah. So it really worked out perfect for you.
Yeah.
So speaking of education, how would you say that your education played a role into what you're doing now as a UFC fighter, or did it? Like, were there elements, because I know it wasn't directly tied to what you're doing, but were there like elements that you could pull from, like, or certain classes that you could say you took while in college that kind of help your career?
Oh, yeah, for sure. Well, before I moved down here, like I said, I was working in the medical field doing all the pulmonary tests. So it helped me. If I didn't go to the UFC, then yes, college would have been very helpful because my job was in that field. So it helped me get a job. But then once I decided to try to make my way to the UFC, I left that and I just started working at the gym and doing all that. But yeah, it's helped me a lot because kinesiology and A&P, all the stuff that I learned about how your body works, I get to use, and stretching and what's wrong with me and why I don't feel this, why I don't feel good because this hurts or this hurts. It's helped me out a lot in the long run. Now, if I'd have done like a psych degree or something, that probably still would have helped me too. Like, why do I feel nervous in this or what? So, I mean, there's a lot of stuff that has helped me with as far as like knowing why my body hurts or what I need to do to get my body to feel right, especially nutrition wise, because you had to take nutrition, and I know what to eat, and how many calories of this I need. It's helped me out a lot in the long run.
Gotcha. So I wanted to talk a little bit more about the journey from moving down to Biloxi to actually making it to the pros. So if somebody was like, I guess, thinking about being a UFC fighter, how was that journey for you? So like wins, how many wins did you have to have? How are you booking your fights, and like how do you go from an amateur to a pro?
So amateur to pro, first off, is you deciding that you want to go pro. So you don't have to have anybody to do that. As long as you have a winning amateur record, say I was 7-3. I lost my last amateur fight, and I decided to still go pro because I knew I was ready. I was beating the dude, and I ended up getting submitted with the armbar, I believe. I can't remember. But I decided, I was like, man, I'm ready. I'm going to go pro. So going pro is just that. You have a winning record to show that you're good enough to at least hold yourself against amateurs, and then you go pro. And then from there, you have to win. There isn't a set number of fights you have to win. It's like, I guess it's like any other career field. You do good enough in your job, then there's people up above that are looking down, like, oh man, he's doing good in his job. Let's try to recruit him. Same thing. The UFC is like, they're like, you win enough, you make enough waves, and the UFC notices you. There, let's try to get him and see what he can do in the UFC. So it's all about how you win your fights. Well, first you have to win. Two, it's are you entertaining? So if you're just taking people down and holding them and not landing any strikes and it's boring, they're not going to get you because their business is all about making money by people wanting to watch you. So if you put on good fights, fun fights, then and you're winning, they're like, we want that guy because he's going to bring in revenue. And the more he brings in, the more we're going to pay him. So that helped me because I like to fight. When we get in there, I'm not trying to hold you. I'm trying to, you knock me down or I'm going to knock you down. I'm going to beat you. We're going to see who's going to make it. And if you try to hold me, then I'm going to make sure you don't. Like, I'm going to do whatever I can to get you off, and I'm going to try to knock you out. So if you're trying to make it to the UFC, first you just got to get wins. So after you go pro, you're not going to get you a manager while you're amateur. Go pro, get you a few wins, 3 or 4 wins, get you a manager that's going to find you beneficial fights. So you don't always have to fight the hardest person to get to the UFC. You have to find fights that are not catered to you, but like I don't have the best wrestling background, so my managers would try to find me a fighter that's not the best wrestler, right? Because if I fight a wrestler, then he's going to try to take me down, and that's where it's harder for me to get up. Now, I've worked on my wrestling a lot recently, so that's not the case. But in the beginning, that was the case. So you got to, like I said, I did it the wrong way in the beginning. I was fighting the toughest people. Like, if I can't beat these people, I don't deserve to be in the UFC. But I was beating them anyways. I just willed my way through it. But if I was smart, then I would have fought fights that were more catered to me, not necessarily easier, but stylistically better matchups. Like I remember making my way through. I didn't have a manager until after I was in the UFC. So I remember like, oh, I'm fighting this dude. People were like, man, I don't know who your manager is, but they must like watching fights because you always fight the toughest people. And like, so I was like, man, yeah, maybe I should be smarter about it. And then, I mean, you just have to, like I said, be smart about it. You don't always have to fight the hardest people. You have to fight people with good records and that are, like I said, cater to your abilities. Instead of fighting the best wrestler, if you're not the best wrestler, try to fight a better striker that still has a good record. And then at that point, you're going to have a fun fight where it's 2 strikers on the feet. The UFC is like, oh, man, that dude's putting on a show. He's not just trying to take the dude down. Like if you're fighting a wrestler and the wrestler's just taking you down and holding you, then you lose. And it was a boring fight. They're like, oh, we don't want that guy. So you always have to try to put on that show. Because like I said, the more money they get to make, the more views they get, then the more they're going to want to promote you and the more they're going to want you. So you got to be an entertaining fighter and you got to win.
Gotcha. So could you explain the difference between, I guess, the fighting styles? I know some of them, but just for the people out there listening, I know you mentioned like wrestling and being a striker. And I know, we mentioned like the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and the Muay Thai. So are there any other like fighting styles that are typically incorporated into what you do?
Yeah. So back in the day, like even when you were training with me, like people were more so specialists. So you were either good at jiu-jitsu or you were good at wrestling or you were good at boxing or Muay Thai. Nowadays, people are good at everything. So, are getting to where they're good at everything because the sports on ESPN, like when I was starting, even when I was in the UFC, the very first time, we weren't on ESPN, like, people knew of it, but it was still like, you're an MMA fighter, like, it wasn't big like it is now. Now it's a main sport that comes on ESPN, everybody knows about it, everybody wants to do it. Now it's like still the fastest growing sport, so it's a lot more opportunity and a lot more open eyes to it, so people start younger. They start wrestling, and they start striking, and they start jiu-jitsu earlier. Like I said, I didn't start till I was 20. Most kids these days are starting to, like, my son, he's doing it since he's been like 3. So people are going to be better and more well-rounded. So you have your jiu-jitsu, which is where you're on the ground and you're trying to submit people, guillotines, rear naked chokes, break their arm bars. So you have that, and then you have wrestling, which is where you control if you're standing or you're taking them down, or if they can't take you down, right? You're controlling the position, standing or on the ground. So if you're going to be a good jiu-jitsu guy, you need to have good wrestling because you want to be able to take people down. doesn't matter how good your jiu-jitsu is if you can't get them to the ground to use it, right? So you have to have good wrestling, which is back in the day people didn't have. They just had good jiu-jitsu. Then you'd get knocked out standing up because you couldn't take them down. So you have to be well-rounded in that. And then you have to have a good enough striking base to be able to stand with them for a minute if you can't take them down, to be able to stand with them long enough to last to get that opportunity to take them down. And the more that you can mix this stuff together, you mix in a takedown, and even though you didn't get it, now every time I look like I'm going to take them down, they have to respect it. So then it opens up your striking. Mm-hmm. And the striking could be Muay Thai, where you're throwing elbows and knees and kicks and punches, or it could be boxing, where you're just working your punches, or it could be kickboxing, where you're not doing elbows, but you're throwing kicks and punches. So, I mean, there's a bunch of different stuff with that. And then you got Sambo, which is Russian, where you're trying to hold people, or it's like wrestling, but just a different take to it. So, I mean, there's so many different ways, but like I said, people are starting so much younger now because it's bigger. It's on main TV instead of you having to buy it on just a pay-per-view, and that's the only way you see it. Like, you see it on ESPN every weekend now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's definitely become a much bigger sport, and, you know, I think even even to the point where, like, there's a women's division. I don't know if that started the same time as the men, or if it came some years later. Do you have any idea?
Oh yeah, that was way later. They didn't start a women's division until Ronda Rousey was a big name. Like, well, she wasn't a big name, but she was like, they knew that somebody they can make a superstar, right? So, I mean, they had the women's division before her, but there was like no real superstars, and it was small, and it was weird back in the day. People didn't want to see girls take damage and do this. Like, it just wasn't feminine for women to do that. So now we got the equal opportunity, and people see that girls fighting can be fun to watch. And I mean, there's girl fighters that for sure could beat some dudes. Valentina Shevchenko, Amanda Nunes, they could definitely beat up some guys. So, I mean, definitely give them their chance. But it started after the men's. I mean, not even just the men's. Like, for the longest time in the UFC, they didn't have any weight class below 155 because people just didn't want to see smaller people fight, right? So they damn sure didn't want to see women fight. But now they have weight classes all the way down to 125, and for women down to 115. And the lower classes still get less views. I don't know why. People just like to see heavyweights try to knock each other out ever since boxing. But even though the lower weight classes came in later, so there's been a lot of changes. So once the lower weight classes came in for men, after that, I think about 5 years, then they had one women's weight division, and then they moved it now to where they got 4 women's divisions, 115, 125, 135, 145. I think they might have 155 too. Yeah, they got 155. No, they don't have 155, I don't believe. As far as the UFC now, now one championships, and other organizations have like 105 atom weight and lighter weight classes than that. So it just all depends where you're at.
Okay. Yeah, I remember Ronda Rousey when she blew up because she got that role in one of the Fast and Furious movies. I can't remember which one. It's like, I think Fast 5 or one of them.
Was she in the Fast and the Furious? It was something. She was in something like that, like Rambo or something like that.
Yeah, she was in Fast. She was in Fast and Furious. I can't remember which number, but she was in one of those. So I think she got a couple of little cameos.
Yeah, after Paul Walker died, I fell off of the Fast and the Furious stuff. So I didn't keep up with them after the fourth one or third one or whichever one that was.
Gotcha. Yeah, I just kind of fell off because it was too many for me.
Yeah,
they just kept coming. But
yeah, they're dragging it out for every little ounce they can get.
Yeah, I think they're coming out with the last one, Fast 10, this summer sometime.
Well, I've heard it's been the last one for 8 of them.
Yeah. True. Going back to the manager part, is there any advice or tips that you could give to people about finding a good manager? I know I hear in sports, and I guess more so with boxing, kind of like back in the day, people having bad managers, or just people in the entertainment industry, period.
Mike Tyson, his manager was charging him $20,000 for a towel for a
Wow.
towel in training. Yeah, every time he used a towel, he'd charge him $20,000. So yeah, you got to watch. Don't just take the first manager that comes to you or that you talk to. That could be. I mean, he could be the right one, but he definitely could be the wrong one. There's so many different things that comes to getting the manager. Like, what percentage are they going to get? What are they looking for out of it? Are they actually going to try to find you good fights, or are they just trying to make money off of you? And if they're smart, the better fights they get for you, the more you're going to win, and then the more money you're going to make in the long run, and the more money they make. So right now, my management company, they get 10% of whatever I make. I know there's some that get 20 and 25%, but you got to still pay your gym fees. You got to pay taxes. You got to pay your coaches. So in the end of it, you usually get about 50% of what you make. So if I make $100,000, I'm keeping about 50%, if that, because your taxes are going to be about 30%. You give 10% to your manager. You give 5% to the gym. You give about 3% to the coaches. So it ends up being about 50% of what you take and then what you make. So, I mean, you just have to be smart about it. Get you the manager that's looking out for your best interest. Don't just get the first person that comes to you or the first person you find, because they might not be the right person. Shop around.
Gotcha. Yeah, that's true, because I think a lot of the times, opportunists are the first person to come running up to somebody when they see that they need help. So I think it's important, like you say, to shop around and don't just take the first person, because there are people out there that's like, oh, I can make a quick buck off of them, and they probably don't know what the hell they're doing, but they're just talking game and acting like they really know what they're doing. But at the end of the day, you end up getting screwed out of a lot of money, or opportunities.
Oh yeah.
So
And not even that. Make sure you do get a manager. Once you, like I said, you don't need a manager in the beginning for your first 3 or 4 fights or whatever. But make sure you do get a manager, because I had a buddy that was in the UFC and he didn't have a manager. He could have made so much more money than he was in the fight. And he was like, well, I don't want to give them, they were asking 20%. I want to give them 20%. I'm like, look at this. They're going to try to make you as much money as you can. You can only negotiate yourself as much as you can, but this is what they went to school for, or they've been doing for a long time, and they know how to do it better, and the matchmakers respect them more than just a fighter being like, well, I want to make this much money. Well, you can go somewhere else then. Because if you're only making $20,000 a fight and they're getting 20% of that, they're only making $4,000, right? They're going to try to get you $100,000 a fight, so then they can make $20,000, right?
Yeah.
So don't think that just because you're paying a manager, you're losing money. They're going to make you more money, and you're going to have to pay them more money, but you're going to end up making more money in the long run. So if you made $100,000 and you had to give them $20,000, you made $80,000. If you're making $20,000 and you gave them $4,000, or you didn't want to have a manager, so you didn't have a manager, but you didn't have to give them that 20%. You only made $20,000. You're still $60,000 short of what you would have made. So don't think that because you had to pay somebody that you're losing money. You will end up making more money if you get the right manager. So make sure you do end up getting a manager so you make more money in the long run. You're going to have to pay them more than you would if you didn't have one, but you're going to end up making 10 times more than if you didn't have one at all.
Good point. Are there any red flags that you would say to look out for when searching for a manager?
Somebody that's trying to get a bigger percentage right out of the gate, or if they're like, well, let me get, what is one of the cases that happened with somebody, like they are like, we'll take you for free right now, but later on we want 50% of what you make, because they know that you're going to end up doing good. Like, so they're going to not make any money while you're making $4,000 here and there, but once you get to $1 million, they're taking $500,000. Watch out for those people. Like, we'll get you for free now, but later on you're going to pay us a bigger percentage. Nah, don't do that, because later on you're going to be making more money. And right now, I know it feels like you want to keep all $4,000 for yourself, because if you're like fighting on a local circuit, you might be, if it's your first MMA fight, you might be making $300 and $300. That's what I started out with. My first pro MMA fight, you're making $300 and $300. Then I moved up to $500 and $500. So you're making $1,000 if you win. And then right then your manager's like, yeah, I don't need that fucking $200. So they're like, well, later on you're going to give me 50% instead. Right now you keep all of it. Later on you give me 50%. Well, 50% of $100,000 is $50,000 that you just paid them, because earlier on they didn't want the 200. They were like, oh, I can live without that 200, but later on you're giving me 50%. So just watch out for those people that are like, we'll give you we'll take a bigger percentage later, but you can do it for free. We'll manage you for free now.
Interesting. So going back to the 300 and 300 and 500 and 500, is that like 500 just to fight and then another 500 if you win? Is that how that works?
Yeah, if you show up to the fight and you get in there, you get 500. If you lose the fight, you're only getting that 500. If you win the fight, you get your extra 500.
Gotcha.
Which is one thing that's different from boxing. In boxing, you have a flat rate. So if you go to a boxing match, it might say you're making $16,000. That's if you win or you lose. I feel like that's how it needs to be in MMA. Right now, they have a show and a win button, a show money and win money. So my last UFC contract was 28 and 28. If I showed up and made weight, I made 28,000. If I won the fight, I made an extra 28,000. Which I would rather it be like. So if I won, I was making what, 52,000. I'd rather it be like, you're making 45,000 flat. It's less money, $7,000 less money, but no matter what, I'm making 45,000. If I show up and I win how it is now, then yeah, I make $7,000 more. But if I show up and I lose, I'm making what, $17,000 less. That's how it should be, and that's how boxing is. So I don't understand why they do that now, but it's how it should be. I know that some fighters do have that in their contract. Once you get to be like a bigger name, a lot of them just get $500,000 flat. So if they win or lose, they make $500,000 or a million. It just depends on what fighter you are. But I know there's a lot of fighters with first round management that no matter if they win or lose, they're making $500,000 flat or a million or $1.5 million, whatever.
I want to ask you some questions on that, but first I want to go back really quick and ask, what is the average, I guess, percentage to pay a manager? I know you had mentioned 10, 20, and 25% for somebody just getting started out, or I guess just industry wide for somebody just kind of like starting out. What would be the average that they should be looking to pay?
It's going to be anywhere from 10 to 20%. I would say don't take anything higher than 15 at max. You can go 20 if you want, but I wouldn't. 10% is what it should be. And I know some of them are like, well, we'll do 20% of what you make, but if you get a bonus, we don't touch that. So, like, if I'm making 50 and 50, 100,000, 50,000 and 50,000, and I win, they get 20% of that, so they get $20,000. But if I win a bonus too, which is extra $50,000, they don't touch that, right? So then they would only get the flat 20,000. Now there's other managers like, we'll do 10%, but we're getting 10% of your bonus if you get one. So if I'm making same 50 and 50, you make $100,000, they get 10,000. But then if you win the bonus, you get an extra 50,000. You made $150,000, they made 15. So you still end up paying them less. So I would always go with the person that's getting you. You're like, man, I don't want to give you any of my win bonus because I had to work for that. Y'all didn't do anything for that. I had to go in there and bust my ass and get beat up and have a fight of the night or submission of the night that y'all didn't have anything to do with. But it's smarter to go with the 10 and 10, like 10%. And even if they get 10% of your bonus, then it is what it is because you're still going to end up paying less money.
Gotcha.
And you don't get a bonus every fight. So if they're trying to say anything over 20%, tell them, hell no. Go see somebody else. I wouldn't even go to 20%. 15% is the highest I'd pay, and I don't even go that high. I'm 10%. 10%. And if you want 10% of my bonus, you can have it. Because then, like I said, if I make $100,000, you make $10,000.
Mm-hmm.
And it ain't like you're the only person they're managing. If they make $10,000 off of you that month, then and they have 100 other people, their managers make good money. So they're not just they're not just doing you. So don't just think like, oh, I lost, I only gave them 2,000. They're still making 2,000 off every other person fighting that's in the UFC minimum.
Gotcha. I was just gonna ask you if they were like managing other people, or if you were the only fighter.
At least every management company should have at least 20 people that are in high level organization. If they're not, also if you have a manager that doesn't work with people that are working high level organization, don't go with them most likely. Because they don't have the connections to talk to them to try to get you into. If you take a manager before you get to the UFC or a big promotion and they haven't had anybody with that experience, it's going to be hard for them to get you in unless you're just a stud. And they're like, we want that guy. And you're like, talk to my manager, and like, we don't know who this guy is. Unless that's the case, like you're just killing it, and they're like, we want him no matter what, then don't go with that person because they're not going to negotiate the best money because the matchmakers don't know them. Like, why would we give him this much? You don't know what you're doing. You've never done this. So go with an experienced manager if you can.
And what is high level organization? Just like UFC?
UFC, Bellator, ONE FC, PFL, anybody that's usually on like a big network that's going to pay you good money. Like if you're fighting for a local organization, the max you're usually going to make, that max you're going to make is 10,000, and that's rare, right? So, I mean that when I say that's rare, that's super rare. Like usually you're going to make maybe 1,000. That's if you're experienced. Even at my level, like me, outside of the UFC, I'm making 3,000 and 3,000. So I just left from making 28,000 and 28,000 to 3,000 and 3,000. So you want to try to get to a high level organization so you're making good money and they have insurance for you when you fight. Like, I mean, you don't want to be fighting for a small promotion forever because you're not going to make it. You're making pennies.
Gotcha. And you just had your last UFC fight back in what, November?
October. And then they asked me in November when I wanted to fight again, and then January they said, "Well, we got all the fights booked until April. We're not going to use them right now. So if we need them back, we'll let you know." I was like, "What?
Gotcha."
Y'all asked me in November when I wanted to fight. I said whenever. So I don't know. That's just how it goes. It's business. So now I'm just going to fight, get back to another big organization, whichever that may be. Like the UFC said, they want me back whenever they need me. Like. But if not, then I'll go to PFL, and they make good money. They have a tournament. PFL has a tournament every year where if you end up winning your weight class, you win $1 million on top of what you made. So usually that's about $1.5 million.
Damn. You need a social media manager or something? No, just saying. No, I'm just kidding. So you said PFL, is that correct?
Yeah, Professional Fighters League.
Okay. I guess.
And they're televised.
Where are they in compare?
They're probably the second biggest. They're on like CBS. I can't remember what exact TV they come on ESPN as well. But PFL and then ONE FC, One Fighting Championship is in Asia. They're really big too, but you watch them on YouTube because they're not in the United States. But they pay really good money and they got a big show. So. I mean, there's not just the UFC. They have a lot of big promotions. Bellator's big. They pay almost just as good as the UFC, if not better for some people.
Gotcha. So going back to the way that the UFC pays versus boxing. Yeah, why do you think that's the reason? Do you think it's with boxing a lot of times?
They lose. So if you have two people and they're both fighting and they're getting paid 50 and 50, you end up paying a total of 150. The winner gets 100,000, the loser gets 50,000, right? If you're paying, so if you're making 50 and 50, you're making 100,000. So if you're paying people and you're like, all right, well, I'd rather go with a flat rate of 85 and 85 instead of making that extra 15,000 if I win, right? Just if I lose, I'm still making my 85 no matter what instead of making 50. So I'd rather have a flat rate of 85 and 85. If both people did that, then they end up paying 170,000 instead of 150. So they're saving money in the long run. And how they think is like, well, if they're getting a flat rate, they might not fight as hard. They're going to fight harder to get that extra money. So they think it's going to bring a bigger, like people better fights. But I don't think that's the case because if I know I'm getting my win money anyways, I'm still going to try to go for that bonus. Then, I mean, I'm still going to put on the fight because the more I win, the more I'm going to make regardless in the long run. So I don't think that's the case. I mean, I think that's how they think. Like, well, if we just make them get a flat rate, they're not going to fight as hard. I think that's what they think, but I don't think that's the case in reality.
Gotcha. I'm going to have to do some research to see the revenue that boxing brings in, like annually versus the UFC. Well,
if you do that, then UFC pays you better than any organization other than like PFL or ONE FC. They're going to all be about equal, but you get like the biggest exposure, like you get the biggest fan base, which can bring you bigger sponsors that get paid you outside and stuff. So ends up all being equal. The UFC is going to bring you exposure
Gotcha.
to if you get released from the UFC or if you leave them later on, like Francis Ngannou did. If he would have never went to the UFC, then he would never be as big a name as he is, and he wouldn't be making the hundreds of millions he's about to make off boxing Tyson Fury. So you need the UFC to build your base up. But after that, I mean, the UFC ends up paying about 3% of their total revenue to the fighters. Boxing pays 50%.
Oh, wow.
So that's why boxers, when you become
Wow.
a big boxer, you get paid way more than UFC fighters. Like UFC fighters are making pennies compared to boxing because the UFC is keeping all their money. They're paying 3% of what they make up to fighters instead of the 50%.
Yo, that's crazy. 3%?
Yep.
Wow. Okay, I'm going to start a petition on change.org to see if we can get it up to like at least 10%.
Good luck. That's why Francis Ngannou left. So Francis Ngannou was the heavyweight champ, and they were wanting him to fight John Jones, who's moving up to heavyweight now, and is going to be the biggest fight in UFC history, this and that. And he was like, well, if I'm going to do this, and I want fighters to have health care, full-time health care, and better pay, and that's the same thing Jake Paul is talking about, better pay and all this. Jake Paul is now signed with PFL, because he knows it's not just him. He knows Francis Ngannou is making good money for himself now because he made a name for himself, but all of us people that aren't Francis Ngannou aren't making that money. And he understands that we should be, because you're putting your brain on the line and ends up being your life.
Yeah.
Like you're most likely not going to die in the cage, but it's going to affect the rest of your life when you have CTE or whatever. If you do end up getting that you're not able to function the same way, or you're getting angry at stuff that you shouldn't be getting angry about. You see it with Antonio Brown. He has got to have CTE. You see all the crazy stuff he does. So you should have insurance. I mean, this is a show, a sport that's on ESPN every weekend. And it's the biggest. It is the NFL of MMA, right? It's the biggest organization for MMA. And you look at NFL players, NBA, MLB, they all have life insurance, health insurance for them and their families, and we can't. And we got the sport that's doing the most damage to your brain and your body.
Yeah,
and we don't have that,
yeah.
and we're on the same platform they are, and we're getting paid. Every NFL player, even if you're on the practice squad's making what, $200,000 a year. You got to be a good MMA fighter to make $200,000 a year, even in the UFC. Why are we not getting the same?
That's crazy.
Crazy.
That is crazy.
Think about it.
Wow. So you did bring up sponsorships, and I did wanted to touch on that a little bit. So sponsorships and endorsements, and I know they're two different things. But as a fighter starting out, how do you go about getting those sponsorships?
It's hard to get a big sponsorship, even in the UFC, because in the UFC, they won't let you wear their stuff out into the cage, and nobody can see it, right? You have to just promote it on social media. So they're like, oh, well, nobody's going to see it on TV. That's why back in the day when the UFC first started and you could have whatever sponsor you wanted to on your shorts, people would be getting paid off their sponsors like $100,000. I know my coach was making $200,000 off his sponsors every fight. Now you don't get to do that. You don't get to wear them in the cage because they want to look professional. So nobody's wanting to sponsor you. So even when you're a smaller guy in the UFC, you're not making anything off sponsors, really. So when you're not in the UFC, you don't have a big enough platform. You don't have enough followers to promote a business enough. They're not going to want to sponsor you, even though you can wear their stuff in the ring and you can show it. So, I mean, it's just hard all the way around. You just have to grind, and hopefully it's usually an MMA fan that owns a business that has extra money that they can use for. They're not just throwing out extra money, but they have a set amount of money that they have for advertising every year.
Marketing.
And they can give you some of that advertising money, so they can write it off on taxes. It's not like it's hurting them at all. It's money they're going to write off on taxes anyway by advertising, put it on commercial or whatever, that they use to pay you to put your name on your shirt, their company name on the shirt and the shorts when you're out there fighting, so people see it. But like I said, you don't have a big enough following for that to matter to them too much. So they're just going to give you their little bit of extra money they have for advertising, and it's not going to be something substantial, but it does help because you're trying to fight and you're trying to pay for your camps and everything. So, I mean, It's just hard all the way around.
Mm.
There's a lot that could be changed as far as the sport, but it's going to be a while before that happens. There's got to be big names like Conor McGregor and like Francis Ngannou's doing now for that change to happen. So it's got to be the bigger names doing that, and they're not going to do that because then it affects their money. And thankfully, Francis Ngannou is, but most people are like, well, I'm getting mine, so fuck everybody else.
Yeah, yeah. Unfortunately. Well, hopefully some of that change comes sooner than later because, just hearing those numbers, and I'm thinking to myself, like, damn, like, this is literally modern day blood sport. Like, you don't see any other sport where there's blood in the ring and, like, people are getting beat to a pulp.
Modern day, what's the thing when back in Greece where they used to go
Colosseum, fight. The gladiators.
Modern day gladiators. Exactly. We're putting ourselves out there for a show and taking all the damage, and we are barely getting any of the benefits. Like I said, every other sport at this level where you're on ESPN and the company's making billions of dollars a year, then they're getting each player is getting hundreds of thousands, if not millions a year, and that's not the case for us. And health care. But you see, even like boxing, they had to have the Ali Act to make that happen. And in NFL, they had to have the NFLPA, Players Association. All that had to happen, and we haven't had that happen yet because the UFC is like, well, we're going to keep every little bit we can. And part of that's Dana White. While he's there, that's never going to happen. So, and I like Dana. Dana's a good businessman, but make a good business, you have to keep as much money as you can. Right? They're not trying to give out that money if they don't have to. Yeah, that change won't come until after he's gone.
Gotcha. So, what did your family think about? I meant to ask you this early in the interview, but what did your family think when you told them that you were going to be a pro UFC fighter, or I guess a UFC fighter?
They knew they watched me try to make it. I mean, they always came and watched me, even as an amateur and everything. And in the beginning, they're like, "Why are you doing it?" Whatever. I was like, "I want to compete." They understood that, so they've always backed me from the beginning. And then they saw that I was good, and they were like hoping I'd make it all the way, and I did. So, I mean, there's always been support from my family.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of people, especially people in the South, wouldn't quite get that. It's like, why do you want to do something like that?
I know a lot of people, they even come and train. They're like, I can train, but my parents don't want me to fight and this and that. And I'm like, I mean, to each their own, but you're an adult. You do what you want. If your parents don't like it, there's a lot of people in the UFC now, like, oh, my parents wouldn't watch it, and they banned me from the house from it for a while. But then once they made it to the UFC and they're making good money, they support the hell out of them. So, I mean, once you get grown and you choose what you want to do, you can't live your life after your parents. I understand you don't want to disappoint your parents, but it's your life. They lived theirs. They did what they wanted to do, or I guess if they followed their parents or whatever, but they got to choose their life. You get to choose your life.
Right. I feel the exact same way. I know when I was telling my mom that I started taking kickboxing, she thought I had aspirations of being a MMA fighter. I was like, girl, chill out. Don't make me come and put you in the chokehold. But I was like, it's not that serious. Just something that I, try something different. Because I'm more into that than I guess I like the more physical sports more so than like the basketball, football type of stuff.
Do you still run and stuff?
Nah, man. I was here getting a dad bod, so I had to start back really working out because my stomach is getting a little bit out of control. So, but
you're back in jiu-jitsu, man. I promise you got to use the whole core during that. You got to use core, whole body. It's all going to be a workout.
Yeah, for sure. That's definitely on my list this year is to get back into that. So I bought that gi and all that gear and stuff when I was in Orlando, and I think I didn't even use the gi. I think we I did. I used it a couple of times because I remember them trying to show me how to tie the belt.
Well, things have changed these days. You can do gi, which is really good, but you can also do no gi, where you're just your shorts and your spats and everything, and that's more practical these days. Now, gi is going to get you better faster because you can't get out of stuff as easily, but no gi is just as good, so don't think you have to just do gi. And anybody that tells you do is just somebody that's been doing it for a long time, or their coach has taught them that way. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm not dissing gi at all. Definitely do gi if you want to, and it's good for you, but you don't have to do just gi. You can do no gi just as much.
Yeah, I think they had no gi on Fridays at the UFC gym that I was going to in Orlando, but I'm not
Yeah,
quite sure. Yeah.
but I
Um.
would say do both. I would say do both.
Oh, there is that the future champion right
I
there.
mean, they're getting away from gi really big these days. Like if you watch any submission tournament or anything, it's all gonna be no gi unless you're watching IBJJF. But no gi is
Mm.
definitely the future, and it translates to MMA in real life a lot more. But like I said, do both. I still love doing gi. It's just an art in its own. No gi and gi are completely different. I mean, there's stuff that goes together with each other side by side, but in the long run, they're different sports. So I mean, uh, do both.
Mm. I saw your son there. I was asking, was that the future champion?
Oh, is that the future? Yeah, he's that dude. I mean, when his first birthday, I got him this little bike that has like two wheels on the front and one wheel on the back, and the two wheels on the front are super close, so it helps him to balance. And then by the time he was 2, he was riding a motorcycle and a pedal bike, which I know when we were growing up, like I said, things happen a lot faster these days or younger.
Hmm.
Like when I was growing up, people weren't riding bikes till you're 7 or 8, like learning how to ride a pedal bike, and definitely weren't riding motorcycles and doing backflips and stuff. My son's been doing that stuff since he was 2 years old now. I just gave him a baseball bat the other day. He's 4 now. This dude's out here hitting home runs on the first day because his hand-eye coordination is so much higher because we got him into stuff earlier. So
Yeah,
yeah, I mean these days, I mean people are learning a lot more. But he's a future in my family for
yeah,
sure. My daughter's gonna be good too, but this little dude's learning fast.
yeah. That's what's up. Um. So what have been some of your career I guess highs and lows, or just name like one or two.
This is Brandon Davis, and you're listening to Career Insights 501 with Dr. Loso. Highs, I guess getting bonuses and beating people you're not supposed to beat. Like it's fun doing all that. But I guess really just all the people I've met through my career, like Donald Cerrone, and there's so many people I just can't think of just many names. I just name him because I'd always go out to his house, and for fight camps, I'd be out there for a month at a time, just helping him train and helping myself get ready for fights and everything. And
Mhm.
all the people that I've met, just not even just celebrities, but I've met a lot of big names and a lot of good people that I can network off of. And it's just, I mean, that's the highs and lows. Getting released from the UFC like recently, I mean, it just is what it is, and you have to learn that. Get back to the drawing board, win some fights, and go to another big organization or wait for them to take you back. I mean, it's just part of it. It's business, and they're going to let you go when they feel like they need to, and they're going to take you back when they feel like they need to, or another company will. So don't let the
Mhm.
lows get the best of you, because there's always going to be a time where you go back up if you push yourself.
Gotcha. So is that kind of like, I guess, being a free agent? Like right now, you're kind of like a free agent.
I guess, yeah, I can fight for whoever I want to now. I already got a fight lined up and trying to line up a few fights with a few different companies. So, I mean, I'm just trying to work my way up and fight good people. Like the guy I'm fighting now just got released from the UFC when I did, and the guy that I'm supposedly fighting next just got released, I think, the same day that I did. So I'm fighting back-to-back people that were in the UFC. It's not like I'm fighting people at a lower level. I'm just fighting people for less money and less exposure.
Right. Gotcha. So what are some things that you can do, like when somebody reaches your level of professionalism or athleticism, to improve their skills, or do you just keep training, or how do you get better?
Keep training, but make sure you're never the best person in the room. If you're always the best person in the room, you're never going to get better. You got to go to where you're getting beaten up. That's why I go
Gotcha.
out to Cowboys and stuff. You go with people that are better than you. That's what's going to make you better. If you're just going with people that you can beat up because it makes training easier, then you're not going to get any better.
Good advice. When you
Always,
said,
and I know it sucks changing gyms or have your coach be like, well, you're too good for us now, or you made it. Like, you can come out there with me and continue to be my coach, but I need to get with people that are beating me up so I get better. So in the fights, I'm fighting people that are not as good as the people I'm training with. Just like a manager, don't let that coach hold you back just because it's hurting their ego. Like, if you got to move on, you got to move on. What's better for you in the long run?
mhm.
Don't let that coach hold you back.
Good advice. So I'm going to switch it up really quick, and we're going to play a quick little game here, this or that. And I'm going to ask you a series of 5 questions, and you just have to tell me which of the two.
All right.
First one, Ric Flair or Hulk Hogan?
Hulk Hogan.
Okay.
Even though I like the Nature Boy,
Socks
but
or
Hulk Hogan,
gloves?
that's what I grew up on.
Socks or gloves?
What do you mean?
It's just socks or gloves? You have to pick.
Gloves, I guess, because I wear fight gloves, boxing gloves, I guess.
Okay. Double your lifespan or able to think twice as fast?
That's a tough one. That's like the Matrix question. If I could double my lifespan but keep myself younger for twice as long, then I would do that. But if I have to double my lifespan and freaking be in a wheelchair for twice as long, then I'm not doing that. So I guess think twice as fast or be twice as smart.
That's an interesting way to look at it, because I didn't.
Yeah, quality over
didn't think
quantity.
about
So
that,
if it's
yeah.
a long, terrible life, then that's going to suck. I'd rather have a shorter, better life.
Yeah. Would you rather use touchscreen devices or use a mouse and keyboard?
Touchscreen.
Okay, so be in jail for a year or live in complete isolations in the mountains for a year?
Complete isolation, because then I can learn a lot about myself.
True. I just wouldn't want to go to jail for a day, so it wouldn't even matter what the other option was.
Yeah. Nah. And if you were asking me, you asked mouse or keyboard or touchscreen. If it was Call of Duty or something, mouse or keyboard or controller all day.
So do you do gaming on the PC?
No, I have
have a
the new
system?
Xbox, which you can go mouse and keyboard on the new Xbox, but I use controller.
Okay. Yeah, I got the Xbox too, but it's just a streaming device for me. I just watch movies on it.
Yeah.
So, I forgot. I was going to ask you something else, but I forgot what it was. Oh, so yeah, what do you listen to when you're working out? What are you streaming besides this episode of this podcast?
I listen to a lot of. I have different. Depends on the mood. I like rap. I like country. I like alternative. So it just depends on my mood. Most time I'm not gonna be listening to country while I'm working out. It's usually gonna be some Lil Wayne. I'm still a huge Lil Wayne fan. Or some Jay-Z, or maybe it's some Shinedown, some alternatives, some Jelly Roll. It just depends. Depends on the mood.
What's your favorite Lil Wayne song?
I don't know if there's a favorite song, man. There's so many to choose. Best
your
rapper
favorite
alive
album,
still. Best album probably Carter 2 or Carter 3. Man, those ones went hard back in the day. Carter 3 probably.
Yeah.
I can go through the Carter 2 and Carter 3 not skip a song. Even the first Carter was good. So,
Yeah, but 2 and 3 were
back in the day, he used
good.
to come out with so many mixtapes and singles. It was unreal. So, Drought 3 was hard.
My favorite Lil Wayne song is Lonely. And I think that was just off some random mixtape or a single he just released or got leaked.
Yeah.
But, yeah, that would be my favorite.
Yeah, I can't pick one. There's too many.
Yeah. So, self-care has really been a big thing in corporate America, but I definitely think that, in any type of physical sport or activity or job, that is really important as well. So what are some things that you do to take care of your mind and body, pre and post fight, or just in general?
Well, I guess we wouldn't call it self-care because I go to physical therapy. I got a good sponsor as a physical therapist. I don't get money from them, but they do all my work for free. And then, I've always been mentally strong, so I don't have a mental coach or anything. I know a lot of fighters do because they get like super stressed. I like to go in there and fight. I'm looking forward to it. A lot of people, I don't understand how people like get so nervous. Like, man, I don't want to do it. Like, put me in there. I don't know. I'm the opposite of other people. So, there's no like really mental coach. I enjoy fighting. That's why I do it. And then I do a lot of physical therapy. Been a lot of church. So it's all that.
Good stuff. So what, like, this is just like your open mic sort of deal, and just to give advice, or if there's anything that we haven't covered in the conversations up to this point that you wanted to tell people who are thinking about pursuing a career in this.
I mean, you're going to lose fights unless you're Khabib. You're going to lose fights, so don't let that get you down. Make that motivate you. Let that motivate you, and whatever. Everybody wants to do what you're good at, right? If you're a good striker, you want to continue to strike. You don't want to do the stuff you're bad at. Do the stuff you're bad at so it becomes something that you're good at. And then once you get good at that, do the other stuff you're bad at. Because then that's the things that are going to make you fail or make you lose. Don't just do the stuff that's easy and the stuff that you're good at, because then you're going to have too many gaps in other places. That's my main thing. And don't let losing stop you, because you're going to lose. It's a sport. Everybody loses. Tom Brady, the best, lost a lot of games, threw a lot of interceptions. He didn't let that stop him. So he won a lot of Super Bowls. So same thing.
Gotcha. Appreciate that. And let the listeners know what you got up. Well, let me ask you this before we get into that. What is like some of your goals, or what do you have a big goal that you want to like achieve sometime, long term, short term, that you're going after?
I just want to be a champ in whatever organization, a big organization, UFC, PFL, 1FC, whatever that may be. But have me and my family financially free of any debt. So make enough money to where that's the main goal, is where I can live off of $100 a week if I needed to. I don't have any bills. The only thing I have to do is pay taxes at the end of the year, and then that's it. My cell phone bill, I want to be paying $400 a month max. There's no car payments. I only have a cell phone bill, and that's it. And that might be $60 once my phone's paid off. You know what I mean? Electric bill, cell phone bill, water bill, that's it.
Yeah. That's definitely the American dream for me, is to be debt free.
Everybody wants to be rich. I don't care about being super rich. I just don't want to have to pay anything. So whatever's enough to get me out of there. You want financial freedom, so then you have freedom to do whatever, like go wherever you want. Like if I'm financially free, I don't have all this debt. I don't need a job that pays me $500,000 a year, because then, I mean, I can save all that and use it for my kids. Yeah, I mean, so that would be good. But financially free gives you freedom to not have to be stuck at a 9-to-5 job and go out and do stuff with your family, even though you might not have a lot of money on you. Then you can save up money in the long run. I mean, financial freedom is the way.
Yeah, for sure. So let the people know what you have coming up next. Like if you want to promote your fight, and let them know where they can reach out to you, or follow you on social media.
I got a fight coming up April 14th at the Hard Rock down here in the coast, Biloxi. And fighting another dude that just got released from the UFC. So it'll be a good fight. And you could probably watch it on fight.tv, or go to the GC MMA, Gulf Coast MMA page on Instagram. My page is Brandon Davis UFC. Check that out. I don't really get on Facebook too much, but I have a Facebook page, Brandon Michael Davis. So if you want to contact me on there, you can.
Cool. And I'll make sure I drop all of that in the comments. So, or not the comments, but in the caption, so you all can check out the links there and take you to his page. And I'll also put the link in there for the fight. Yeah. So, but Brandon, I appreciate you being on the show today. So like I was told some other guests that I really wanted to have a diverse, group of guests to come on here, and not just talk about like some tech job or some, business analyst. And, I'll have those people on for sure. But I definitely want to, I guess, cater this more to unique jobs and careers and professions, because I feel like it's easy to get that. How do I become a computer engineer? But like, who do you really know that you can talk to and say, hey, like, what's this like becoming a UFC fighter? Or, like, what does that process look like? Or how do you make it? So just having people with those unique careers come on here and talk about that and help people out and to manage that process.
Oh yeah, I understand that.
Yeah. So I'm going to let you get back to your Sunday. And again, I appreciate you being on the show.
Hey, I appreciate you having me on.
Alrighty. Thank you all for listening, and I'll see you all next time.